God help us fight? Does God help us in our earthly endeavors to basically win either in a social setting or in a political setting, in a war setting? Does God help us towards our aim of winning overall? Now, there are many different answers to this. My answer is that God helps us the same way a body would want its cells to succeed. God, himself, herself, itself, whatever you want to call God, the source, the head, the ultimate, the spirit beyond creation. God helps us in the extent that he is invested in everything that is a part of him, and I believe that everything is a part of God. So how does God pick sides? How does God say, okay, I want these people to win over these people? And the truth is that I don't think God chooses sides like that. I think that God is very much aware of everything that is a part of him, of course, is a super consciousness to our minor consciousnesses that are a part of him. But as far as, if we pray during a sports match, before a sports match, please God help us win, would God help us? And I would say that is very unlikely. He wants things to work out the way that reality is set. God has created a reality that basically takes care of cause and effect. And now the cause and effect of winning in any aspect of it, even in a war, has to do with what the cause of the conflict is and who had more to do with causing it. That seems very vague, but if, for instance, in a war, somebody attacked somebody else because they're afraid that they would be attacked, then I feel like the nature of cause and effect and the fabric of reality would basically overall make the person win, or allow the person to win, who did the least harm to the other. Now, you can say, okay, throughout human history, there have been many wars won where it just didn't seem like the right side, the more just side. But I would say that we have to look at this in the long term. Human society is improving. And it's improving because, over time, and these improvements are incremental. That's why any given generation doesn't really see them as becoming better than the generation before, because they're so incremental and because the picture is so vast. But these incremental progressions are leading towards a freer human race, a better off human race, a human race that cares about each other more than the generation previously. But the reason why most religious, spiritual, or even very political people, well, at least a lot of them, believe that generations before were better is because we are in this incremental progression. We don't see the bigger picture, and we love, as human beings, to look at the problem. We love to look at the problem and the problems that we have and say, oh, these problems are worse than the problems that came before. When in fact, overall, our problems are much smaller than those of previous generations. We are caught up in worrying about what we have to deal with and have much less information about what our ancestors or those who came before us had to deal with, let alone are concerned with what they had to deal with. As far as the amount of food we can provide for our people in any given country, the amount of educational awareness always seems a little bit lower than we imagined our ancestors as having, or our previous generations as having, just because we usually idealize our mentors. Those who came before us, most people think that, okay, they were better than us, let's try to be like them, and then that's why we focus on the problems. We tend to focus on the problems because of this, and when we do that, we start to think, okay, well, we're not living up to our idea of our ancestors or the previous generations. And the truth is we aren't living up to it because our idea of the previous generations is incorrect. Because our idea of the previous generations is skewed by our idealization of them. They become our idols societally, socially. So we start to think, okay, well, we're not living up to them because of all the problems that we see in any given society. And this is true in every society in the world right now. We tend to think that those before us had a better ideals. But in truth, they didn't. We have been progressing forward for quite a while. Well, I mean, the entire time that humanity has existed in recorded history, we've been progressing forward. There's this biblical idea that classical era people were just better. They kept to the biblical code. Jewish people believe this as well, and Muslim people believe this as well, that they kept to their codes, their religious codes, much better than we do now. Because we see all the little examples now, and we don't have information of all the little examples before. So does God help us in winning wars, for instance, to go macro, and not start with the smaller? I don't think God does. I think that God has initiated a system in reality, a system of cause and effect that basically deals with anybody who actually does better. And you can say, okay, what about the Holocaust during World War II? That was a very terrible thing, and that is a gigantic hiccup for humanity. But as far as what people had to deal with even before the Holocaust, it is smaller globally than the numbers that it took of human life itself. A lot of people might disagree with this, but all of the disease, warfare, killings, executions, murder, and you can even say sins, were much worse in previous decades before the example of the Holocaust. And they were pretty bad even after the Holocaust. And you can say after the Holocaust, many things happened, but it wasn't as bad as that. Yes, but overall, as far as considering the entire Earth, things have gotten better. They were worse before the Holocaust, if you consider globally, and after the Holocaust, they've been getting better. If we're using this example as a center point. Now, if we pray to God to say, okay, let us win this sports match, or let our party win in the election, we're taking into account the minor examples and minor problems of that time. We're not truly looking at the big picture. Now, if our party wins and we view the other party as being worse, then we feel like things are getting better. If we lose and we feel like our party is better, and the worst party wins, the worst party, whatever political party that is, then we feel like things are getting worse. But these are very, very circumstantial and minute calculations in the grander scheme of things. We have to look at the grander curve of progress of humanity. I believe that we are in a cycle that is going up, that we are learning, that we are progressing, and that we are reaching a point that is ever better, for lack of a better term, than any point we've been at in the past. And we have to also take into account that the amount of information we have now is much more extensive than any amount of information we've had in the past. A lot of the information of the past has been doctored by those who controlled the media, who controlled the scholarly works, and controlled the information printing in past generations. Many people controlled these aspects to allow humanity to believe that any given leader was the correct one, and that they were basically the right choice at the time. So we have a very skewed view of history if we're taking account the record. We have a very skewed view of history, even if we're analyzing all the details of our lifetime in the past and the generations before. If we assume that the generations before were better, because we like to look at the details that we enjoy. We like to analyze history to see who the heroes are, and see how the villains were defeated. And we think of the villains nowadays, those who we consider as the villains, as the ones who need to be defeated now. But the villains nowadays, in my opinion, are much less villainous than the villains of the past. There's a lot of information that is very stilted towards viewing past generations as better. But in my heart of hearts and in my logic, I see that we are getting better as a human race. We will continue getting better. And I think that the only thing we should keep into account is that we should look at information through a third-party perspective. We shouldn't get attached to the information of now. We should instead analyze the information of now and only hold it relative to the information of the past if we understand that we idolize our heroes of the past. And if we try to scrape away all the idolatry of the heroes of our past and really look at the facts, we'll find that we are in that upper curve. We are in a cycle that is ascending. Anyway, this has been a bit of a rant on does God help us fight? And ultimately, you can say everything is a part of God, and God doesn't take sides, in my opinion. And cause and effect, the fabric of reality God created, is ultimately what decides it. Our very actions decides it. It's not like God is separate from creation and just kind of sending out thunderbolts when he's pissed off at somebody, or he's turning elections when he doesn't like one party, or he's raising up leaders and destroying others when he feels like those are the right ones, or like even if he knows they're the right ones, if you want to look at it that way. I think God has created a system that is very, well, my beliefs are very similar to the Founding Fathers of America that are deitists. They believe that, I hope I'm saying that word correctly, but they believe that many of our Founding Fathers, not all, but many, believe that God created a system like a watch that he allowed to run like a machine, and the machine that allows us to progress is I call it karma, but you can just call it cause and effect. You can call it cause and effect and say that this machine was created in a way that would allow us to see the error of our ways and to progress based on what we learned from past mistakes. But like I said, in conclusion, does God help us fight? It just depends on how you look at it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been interesting. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. If you want to comment and say that you agree or disagree, feel free to shoot it down there in the comment section below. And I will see you in the future.